The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, currently streaming on Amazon Prime, has finished its first season. Is it worth the watch or is it a waste of time? As always, guys, please check the description below to find out how you can save money on gas, groceries, and at restaurants. Not a sponsor, but just doing our part to help each other. Spoilers, I'm Angel.
Hold on.
And this is the Tales of Two Bros. As I said earlier, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, just finished its first season on Amazon Prime, 8 episodes. They are scheduled to do 5 seasons.
Really? I thought it was just 2.
No, they're scheduled for 5. Now, that may change in comparison to not our review, of course, but how the fans take it. Now, I know you are a big fan of Dungeons & Dragons, and a lot of people who are fans of Dungeons & Dragons were actually fans of the Lord of the Rings books, especially like The Hobbit and the known Lord of the Rings with Gandalf and Sam the Wise and Frodo.
Yeah, Frodo Baggins.
But which one is the? Wait a minute, hold up. Who's the older one? Who's from The Hobbit?
Well, there's Bilbo Baggins and Frodo Baggins.
Okay, there you go.
It's all the same bloodline, and I want to say it all started from the show. This is like,
well, this is a prequel, obviously, to the movies that we know and love from Peter Jackson. It takes place about 1,000 years ahead of that.
About a full millennia before Hobbit, right?
About that.
Yeah.
You have, that I know of, well, you have like 2 characters mainly that are still from here that goes into The Hobbit. You have Sauron and you have, what's her name? Galadriel. Well, her, yes.
Yeah.
And here in the series is played by, excuse me if I say it wrong, Morford Clark.
I thought it was Morford Clark. I may have mispronounced it too.
I told you. I just said I am sorry. I'm going to butcher the name. I just said that.
I could be wrong too.
And right, sorry, Galadriel, the character from The Rings of Power, was played by Cate Blanchett in the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogies. So that's why I saw it. And then you have Sauron, who's always talked about. He's always referenced in those movies, but we see him here, I guess, reborn. Anyway, how I got involved with the Lord of the Rings and the love for it was through seeing the cartoon, the animated feature of The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, done by Ralph Bakshi back in the day. It's like in the 70s or early 80s that came out. And I found that beautifully scary, especially with Gollum and how that character is portrayed there. And the artwork, that's why I call it beautifully scary. Because it kind of, when you're a kid seeing that, it kind of leaves a mark in one way or another. What about you? What was your introduction? Was it through Dungeons and Dragons? Did you read the books? I didn't read the books, but did you?
No, I never read the books. My introduction was the same as you. Matter of fact, I barely remember the Lord of the Rings. One never stuck out to me was The Hobbit. That was the one I always called. In regards to D&D, that I do play it now, D&D, but in my younger days I didn't play it. But a lot of the design and lore and structure of what D&D is, you can pretty much find your foundation at its core to stories like Lord of the Rings. It takes nitpicks from various aspects, but a lot of it does come from Lord of the Rings if you really are looking at fantasy stuff.
Right. Quick shift. During the Black Adam film, the previews, did you see the Dungeons and Dragons trailer?
Yeah, no, I knew about that trailer before the Black Adam.
Well, of course you did.
But yes, I did see it.
I knew about it, then they aired it. I was like, okay. And I'm like, ooh.
You were thinking about the old 1980s cartoon?
Yes, and I was like, I wish that was it. Because I was like, from the trailer of that film and then my memories of the cartoon was so much better.
Yeah, I feel like I saw clips of the cartoon. I feel like you're off on that one.
Well, I mean, of course I was young. I was a kid, but I'm just saying the way they did it, presented it. Anyway, let's go back to The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. This is how the rings came about. Like I said, there's 2 characters. Are there any other characters that you know that are transitioned into the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit.
Okay, so one of the main characters, I'm not 100%, but I'm like 98% sure it's Gandalf.
You think that's him?
Gandalf the Grey has multiple names, and he is technically, if I am correct, because again, I never read the books. The books, they go into lore further back than the Lord of the Rings Ring of Powers does. So it goes even further back. But if I am correct, he is the same, for lack of a better term, species as Sauron.
Yeah, see, this is why I'm thinking that he is Saruman.
Saruman or Sauron?
Saruman. If I'm not mistaken, that's played by Christopher Lee. Because right now he's gray. Okay, yeah. He's gray, correct? The stranger.
Oh, you mean the one in the white? It was. Yeah, I just color coordinated.
He has that transition, right? He transitions into the white. And Gandalf, when we first meet him, he's gray, and then he transitions into Gandalf the White.
Yes,
but different clothing and all that stuff. So
that's another reason why I'm thinking it's Gandalf the Gray, though. Not just because of the color. Two reasons. One, I had a friend that told me like he.
That's cheater.
Okay. I have a lot of friends in D&D. One of my friends told me, and they could be wrong, that Gandalf the Grey actually acquires one of the rings of power from the elves. So he would have to be a character that would be around that time. Two, it does explain why Gandalf the Grey has such a hard-on for the Hobbit people, especially the Baggins people, because he is always, like, their name is slightly different.
Yeah. And they're the ancestors of the Hobbits.
Yes.
Halflings, yeah, they're like, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I'm sorry if you said that. I'm sorry.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's the same family bloodline, and like has a heavy tie to that bloodline, and he keeps coming back to them. He's like, I'm a friend of the family. He's like, you want to go to an adventure? I knew your great great grandmother did. Going again. He keeps coming back to them.
Again, this 1,000 years. Yeah. 1,000 years. So I don't know.
I mean, possibly live a couple hundred years.
Yeah. How we think of 1,000 years is different from them. Like, not to go religious and all, but in the Bible, you have people in the Old Testament that lived to like 500 years, what have you. But they never really did. It just means that they lived a good life. They lived a good life where how well they lived, they exaggerated. Because again, Tolkien created this world, and how that world is done, we just can't take it as exact like we're used to.
Yeah.
Especially again, the language he wrote, it was different. These creatures, he made a wonderful world with his imagination. So again, 1,000 years could be real time, or it could be like exaggerated in the sense of. Because I know that elves live a long time, but
elves do live a stupid long time. And but like where you see her character come Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, she is wielding like some really powerful magic. So I feel like she's not your normal elf.
You and I have not read the book, so we don't know what others do.
Exactly, and people
they know
in the comments. Tell us, educate us.
Yeah, I just know before we go any further that so many people got offended by some of the character choices.
True. I have some friends that have that issue too.
Because they're like, how dare there be a black elf? How dare there be a black dwarf?
Yeah. I actually got in a debate about that because I was like, I have no problem with it. I did ask the question, I'm like, so if we have a black elf, does that mean he's a dark elf? Because that is a species. And they go, that's racist. I'm like, why is that racist? That's an actual species thing. And in various lores and concepts, he could be the rogue dark elf that just joined up with these other elves. And they were like, no, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, all right. I mean, cool. We just have black and white elves. I don't give a damn. But people were getting pissed about the queen, the dwarf, and the one dude. And
the elf too. Yeah. But the thing is, like, in the creation of Lord of the Rings too, like the drawings, like the elves were long black hair, not white hair that we got from the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. They were also debating too, like I had that too. It's like, why are these elves have short hair, stylized? Why are they like the prequels of Star Wars, their hairstyle, very modern, very up to date hairstyles? And I'm like thinking to myself, like, that shouldn't be. They should not have 2022 haircut styles. And of course, they're saying like all elves are not exactly the same elves. They have different, like, I guess you call it like branches, if you will, like how we are, like human races. We're like human race. We're different in many ways. So some sects are short hair, and then there are some with like white, long, flowing hair.
Exactly, and that's why I asked about the dark elf, and like because you're right. There are different sects or different groups of elves that branch grew a certain way. They evolved a certain way. Various characteristics. But the one you always see in royalty are considered the high elves, and they're the ones that are like, I'm better than.
Right, and we saw that here. Yeah, for me, I don't care because as long as the performance is strong and it's believable, I'm good. If you can win me over with your performance, to prove my point, you have like Wolverine, Hugh Jackman. People were against that when he was chosen. He was a no-name. He was not the height of Wolverine in the comics, yet he killed it. Daniel Craig broke the stereotype of what James Bond should be. Before him, the guys were black hair, and he broke that mold because people are so, on the like exact image of what they have in their head. And I had that problem too. I have that in my head. I said that with Black Adam. I had my own version or vision of how Black Adam should be, and they went a different way. Who did you like?
I was, let's put it down this way. So, the series breaks the story into 4 parts. I want to say that's fair to say, right? You got 4 different groups.
4?
Yeah, you have
definitely 3.
There's the dwarf and the elf.
Oh, then you have the halflings.
The halflings.
Or the half-foots.
With the stranger.
The half-foots,
right?
The stranger.
Then there's Galadriel with the dude.
There's more than because you have not Saruman's. Wow, Jesus, the guy, the one that's preparing for the return.
I count that part with the. I'm just gonna call him Dark Elf.
I think it's Aldor. I think it's Aldor.
I'm putting that with the farm wife and the elf. I put that all together because the majority of the show for them intersected with each other.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's why I consider those 4. So when you break it down into those 4, I got a lot of focus when I was like action-wise. A lot of action revolved around that, what we were just talking about, where it was the orcs with the farm wife and the elf. A lot more action that way, in my interpretation. But what intrigued me was, as silly as it was, the stranger with the half-foot.
That caught your attention more?
That caught my attention. But the part that caught my attention the most was oddly the dwarf and the elf relationship.
Okay. Yeah.
Because and it's weird because, in my opinion, I got a lot of lore and building in the dwarf kingdom, their interactions with each other. Like when you first meet them together, that whole building of their interaction of doing the challenge of breaking the stones, and then you see the dwarven kingdom, and then they turned out to be best of friends and stuff like that. And then the dynamics between the king versus the prince interacting with the other elves and stuff like that. That was really got me intrigued on intellectual level. So I would say that one was the most. Funny enough, was entertained by Galadriel's thing, but it was at first, it was good, and then it started taking the back burner until the end. How about for you?
I did like the relationship or the story with the strangers and the half-foots.
Yeah.
I have to say, it made me question who he was. I thought first, that's Saruman.
Yeah.
That's Saruman. That's Sauron. That's Sauron.
Especially on the last episode.
No, not that one, because I knew who Sauron was. Is when he is right before he takes out those 3 witches, or actually, it's 1 witch and the 2, the Seeker and the Warrior. When he took them out, I was like, okay, that's not Sauron. The reason why I thought that, because he was reborn, and when Kimberly and I saw it, his introduction, she immediately went to Clark Kent and Superman. No, Clark Kent and Superman. The way he landed, and it was like a ship in a way, and the debris all around. He's all by himself. That similar to more like when
You're saying
Superman
that
returns.
the girl is Martha Kent.
Well, no, she's more like Sam the Wise.
Well,
where
I'm comparing
her and the
to
Stranger-
like Superman in that asset.
No, I understand, but this is how he landed and the way he landed and all that debris, just like how Kal-El landed into Smallville or returned from Superman Returns, and he landed like all that debris and he comes out, he's just laying there. Anyway, and now Hard Landing, he's all confused.
Mhm.
He doesn't know how to speak. He's like discombobulated, so his wits is not all there. He's learning how to heal himself. He's finding these new powers, and there are people talking, his return, and once he returns and knows about his powers, he's going to be a threat once again. Because again, this may be 1,000 years before The Hobbit. This is the middle trilogy of the book, if I'm not mistaken. There's another even further prequel.
Yeah, because
where
Sauron wasn't
existed.
always the big bad. He was like the general
Right.
of the big bad, and then there's like taking the power of the situation.
Right. So there's another story that we don't know about, another prequel, because the Lord of the Rings that we know, they came out by Peter Jackson. Then there was a prequel, The Hobbit, that we got introduced that tied in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And now we have here another prequel to the original. So it's like, but anyway, the interaction, Halfwits and with the stranger. I like how he took out the three.
Oh, when he gained the staff?
When he gained his staff, gained the power, gained the confidence, knew who he was, because he thought he was the baddie, because he was accidentally harming people.
Yeah.
Even though he was trying to heal and stuff like that, because he didn't have control of his powers, and he didn't know who he was. He was almost like he had temporary amnesia. And
he fell out the sky. I mean, that makes sense.
Right. No, exactly. To see him take them out, to see him get his confidence, to see him have his powers restored, that was hot. And then when they go out, get dispersed or destroyed or killed, you see their ghost figures, which reminded me of the ghosts in The Hobbit, the final battle, I believe, in The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
All the ghosts, the past, come and help. And then I think we saw at the end the orb that we saw with Saruman, and when Gandalf went to visit, I believe. I could be mistaken.
I mean, they more reminded me of the wraiths that were hunting at the hobbits.
Right, but they were black. Granted, it could have been white when Frodo put on the ring and he saw them differently, if I'm not mistaken, because I have not seen the Lord of the Rings. They were white. So they could be them. But
or similar species.
But in the regular human eye, they're black, but with the ring on, they're white. But anyway, and I agree with you. I do like the one with Durin, the relationship with Durin and Elrond.
Oh yeah.
And it was cute. It was like, it was hard because you can feel or you can relate to Durin going against his father, just like any kid going against their parents.
Yeah,
and I can understand where the father's coming from, but I definitely understood where Durin was coming from.
And there was even like a very poignant moment where he's like, "Oh, you expect me to be king? You won't let me make a decision." It's like he calls him out on it. It's like, "You handicap every single thing I do, and you expect me to grow." So like,
while you're stifling,
while you're stifling,
right?
That was like a hard conversation to watch in that aspect. I'm like, wow, that's. So it was an interesting dynamic to see. And speaking of the wife part, she was delightful as a character in between the two of them.
Issa, she was awesome,
especially like when she was insulting his father, and then she goes, "I shouldn't insult your father." He's like, "He is the king." Da, 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 da. He's like, "Yeah, but your mother, she still has those ticks in the beard or the lice in the beard." And she looks at him. He's like, "It was a joke."
The action I thought was pretty good
when it happened.
The farmer, the girl, and the elf. Some of it was really cool, but
they had some of the most action.
Yes, with them because they were fighting the orcs, and they had a few action scenes.
Yeah,
but for me, the most touching, not action, it was the death of Sodak Burrows.
Yes. Yes,
the black other leader,
the Pathfinder, I want to call him.
Right, of the Halfwits. The way he passed, it was touching. It was like I was hoping the stranger would heal him, but the way it was just subtle, it was so touching and heartbreaking.
Yeah,
everyone's just honoring his last wish, watching the sunset or sunrise one more time, and he fades. You just see him. Like, they don't see him going out, but we, as the audience, sees him just seeing his life.
Yeah, it's
leave him.
like he's
And
kind
I
of
was like, oh,
going to sleep almost.
right. Well, that's what pretty much, unfortunately, his death is, like falling asleep, especially whatever. I mean, but yeah, it was just like, oh,
And
I just wish that the
you're right.
stranger came.
He had he's a surprisingly touching character. Like I didn't expect to see like a character that wouldn't tie to the main story so much that I agree with you. He was a very touching and relatable. He was like the elderly grandfather of the village that everybody loved and listened to. And at the same time, like the grandmother somewhere, one of the church ladies would just always insult but somehow respect him at the same time. That was the relationship that he would have. And yeah, you're right, it's very, very touching and sad.
We saw the stranger heal himself. We saw the stranger heal part of the forest while bringing back the trees. He did something else, I believe. So when he didn't do that, I mean, maybe it was just he had to die. Maybe he saw that.
Maybe he used up too much energy already. I mean, he just fought off the three things.
True, but he had the staff to help him.
Oh, the staff got burned away. It disappeared. After he banished them or casted them aside, the staff kind of just goes up in light.
Oh, I thought he had a staff with him when they were walking away. With him and the half-foot walked away to leave for their venture.
I don't know if he just grabbed another stick, but
maybe.
Yeah, the one that he took from the three, that one disappeared.
Now, if it is Gandalf, it would have been a sure sign if he had a hat. If he grabbed a hat somewhere for his long walk and journey for the shade. But so the battles, it came a lot with Arondir and Bronwyn, that's the farmer girl.
Yes.
Became the leader of the town. Mm-hmm. Those had some great fights. And there was one scene where, I don't know how he did it, the elf, he thrust his spear and it looked like the orc shifted out of the way, but he still got him and cut him. I rewinded 3 times to see what the heck.
Wait, where was it? Which battle was this part in? Was it in the?
Oh my god!
He had some good fight scenes.
He did.
That might have been the tower.
Not in the trenches. Not in the trenches, but when they're defending the town.
Oh, that's the second battle of night. Because the first battle at night was the tower, where he laid the traps, He knocked down an entire tower pretty much by himself by laying out some booby traps. I'm like, this man is smart. I'm like, what kind of military genius lets this guy go back to reinforce the town? He's like, I want you to give him a warning. I would have picked the weakest guy. This guy was fresh.
Right. Well, I guess the overconfidence. Sometimes when you're overconfident, you or you miscalculate.
That was a huge miscalculation. Oh, and when he was fighting that one orc, and he got it in the eye, and the orc was just trying to still stab him with it, and you see the blood just coming out
with
the eye.
It.
Oh,
right, he got so close. But I have to tell you, her son.
Her son pissed me off.
Oh my god, he pissed me off too. Theo.
Yeah.
He pissed me off. He had this arrogance. The elf just saved him multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Even his mom saved him. And he is giving attitudes you're not the boss of me. You're not my father.
There was a few times I wanted the elf to just be like, boy, shave that off. Because of the mustache.
He needs to go.
The mom was way more badass than the son. She came in with the orc's head. She's like, I think we need to leave. Here's your proof.
Well, she had to. Well, she had to be because she was the sole provider of her son. So she had to step up. She had to be both mother and father.
Oh, true.
If you will.
But she didn't need to do that for the town. She could have just done that for him and her. But she stepped up for the town too. That's what I mean by she's a badass. The battle goes down, she's like, I'm at the forefront.
The strength in numbers. So how can you help destroy or stop a force if you don't have a force with you? So she needed that. And yeah, she dug deep because she was also a medic. Also, she was the town's healer.
I want to say it was unofficial town doctor. She used a lot of medicine and herbs and stuff like that, which is also one of the things that she bonded over with the elf, with her knowledge of plant life. Their town had a lot of hardship. The fact that a third or half their town pretty much went to side with the orcs.
Right. Well, that was with Ador, right? The leader, the prophet, if you will, of Sauron. Sauron, excuse me. He was the prophet. He was half elf, was he not? Because he could not get burnt. He could feel the sun.
They alluded that he is the first It was like a Dr. Frankenstein experiment kind of situation. He started out as an elf and was altered.
So is that what it is? Is that what orcs are? They're the past elves resurrected.
Still not 100%
I guess damaged.
Sure. They're like a new species that was. I want to say they're like a man-made species. So like kind of like okay, let's put it this way: like there are certain canines and dogs that naturally didn't exist until breeding was done.
Right, but from what I remember from the Lord of the Rings, it's like that the orcs were reborn from the earth as if they were buried, and they were reborn, and they have a conscience. They're not zombies, but they're now orcs serving Sauron.
If I remember what I heard properly in the series here, Sauron created the orcs. But he used this guy as like, and some other elves as the basis, like the prototypes. And then they evolved them from there. And then the orcs go through several evolutions because in The Hobbit, they still had there were some orcs that were still not like capable of going to the sun. And then there was, by Lord of the Rings, there was orcs that could fully walk to the sun. It's like, that's why they would cover themselves in the Rings of Power, because the sun actually burned them.
I don't remember them being in the sun.
In Lord of the Rings, they were definitely in the sun. They were definitely in the sun. That scene where Sean Bean got shot down with the arrows.
Yeah, they were still in the forest.
Yeah, but it was pure sunlight in there.
See, I don't remember that. I remember they're just shy of being the sun. They could by the water, by the riverbank. That's where I remember. I mean, I haven't seen it in a long time, but that's where I'm thinking, because I know they were being chased by orcs, but the orcs were covered.
I mean, they still wore armor of some kind.
No, but covered like with cloth, like cloaks.
I mean, there were
so to protect them.
There were still some that couldn't do in the sunlight, so there was a mix. But yeah, basically they went through evolution.
They were born at night.
I'm gonna go with sure on that one. I'm not 100%.
I just remember because I remember like
a flower that blooms only at night.
Yeah, but I think it's the two towers where you see the birth of the orcs. The other hobbits.
Oh, like when they're always
hungry.
Yeah,
and they were watching them, seeing them come out. I believe that, but I could be wrong. But for those who are watching, listening, please let us know how are orgs created or made about, or earthed. Yes. Or
give us the lineage. If I don't see an essay in my comments, I'm going to be disappointed.
Or you can always email us at talesoftvbros@gmail.com. Like that always helps.
You're going to get a huge flood of emails.
I don't mind. They'll probably say that. That'll be like, I don't have the time to read the books right now. I'm too busy watching shows that we can review. Okay, so I think we've discussed what we liked. I do find it slow. I do find the part with Galadriel not captivating enough. Her story right now, it is important because she was duped, because the whole time she was with Sauron without realizing it.
Yes. Which I thought, like, by the end, I'm like, oh, nice. Like, I liked it by the end, but the lead up to that took forever.
No, right. But the thing is, like, she got duped. And again, just to see all that was just little And you see what, like, Sauron's doing is pretty much what Emperor Palpatine is doing. Mm-hmm. He foresees, he knows what's going to happen. So he's playing his part to help motivate or move forward what needs to be done for him to become in power. Palpatine played a chess game, the pieces right in the proper area. And this is what Sauron did. Yeah. He did the same thing. He got her to relinquish the dagger her brother gave her, or what she was betrothed once he passed away.
To help build what he needs.
The rings. Well, the 3 rings.
Originally, he wanted 2. Well, technically 1, but he's like, we need to make 2 to make it work. And he offered her
3.
No, that was because of her.
3 rings.
Because remember, he approached her at the riverbed, and he's like, you can rule by my side, like balance me, and you rule by my side. And she has a vision of what Sauron, as we know him in Lord of the Rings, and her all in white.
Right, but she said, no, they made the decision of 3 at the
after
Smith place.
Yeah, exactly. This was after she figured who he was, and she goes, it's like 2 splits the power, and then the one guy's like 3 balances it. Which the logic of 3 balancing does not make sense.
No, I guess if 1 gets out of line, then the 2 can overtake the 1.
I guess, yeah.
So I guess that's the balance. It's like, oh, it's like policing each other.
I mean, when you first introduce her character in episode 1, she has like a little bit of a badass moment.
She has a badass moment when she's trying to decipher who's going to be the lieutenant
Exactly.
of the fleet. That was pretty badass. But her emotions got the best of her. I guess that she was too tunnel vision focused. And you have this guy, not knowing that it was Sauron, but she probably pictured him as a grotesque being, like an orc, or have you disfigured the appearance of evil, where
Sure.
you have this guy here who's attractive, can fight, saying all the right things, but not too easily or not too coincidental. You can tell that there's moments where she's falling for him. She's liking him. She's like, ooh, okay.
He's a little bit smooth at some points, yeah.
Right. Even though they first met, it was a little rough. He saw things. He knew what he was doing. And it all played to his plan.
They did have a common enemy, too, which was the leader of the orcs.
No.
He almost killed the leader of the orcs, and the leader of the orcs did say that, I'm going with the fact that, it could be a lie, but I'm going with the fact that he said that he turned on Sauron, and like the guy and the orcs like acted like he didn't recognize. He's like, "You don't remember me?" He's like something like along those lines, and she stopped him. And then the real messed up part is she actually saves him. So they saved each other at multiple times. He saved her from the water, drowning from the beast.
Mm-hmm.
She saves him from was it a sword injury or like a?
He saves her from drowning.
Yeah.
And yeah, they saved each other, but he was sick, right? So she took him to, was it Middle Earth? No, not Middle Earth. I can't. Jesus, oh crazy.
The island
where the elves,
of the
where the elves dwell.
Oh yeah.
She took him to his land, to her land. Excuse me. So you can see the mistakes right there happening, but again, it feels like he's just putting down the groundwork of what he needs, because there's 3 rings now. But there are going to be more rings later.
There are definitely going to be more rings, yeah.
Right, and he gets one down the line, and that ring then becomes the ring of my precious.
The ring to rule them all. Because like overall, there's, if you include that ring, there's 21 rings. It's a lot of rings.
It's a little excessive, I think, but okay. All right. Even though the show is slow, 8 episodes, they're relatively just shy of an hour or so. I believe action is good when there is action. There are some really good character developments and dynamics throughout. It makes you question who these characters are, especially the stranger and especially Sauron, because I didn't see it coming until it was right there. I was like, oh, that's him.
When the pieces start falling together, it's like, oh.
Well, they fell together like that, like quick. With the stranger, I want to call him the Gray, but the stranger, you don't know because he doesn't know. And it could be in a way that since his mind is all messed up at the moment, you could see that he could easily turn this or turn that. But when the 3 of white, because that's what they wore, and I thought they were cool. They were very cool, especially the witch. She was so cool looking. Her short hair,
they were
short white hair, and the white eyes. I was like, that was a cool dynamic. And it was cool because they're white, because usually white is looked at as pure and as good. But they were not.
I mean, you can take the approach that they're pure evil.
True, but usually evil is represented by black or red. And gray is like that in between. You're not totally white, you're not totally black, you're right there where the stranger is wearing
Jedi
much gray. Exactly right. And you have that with George Lucas got the influence by the Lord of the Rings books, the 7 Samurai. So you can see, while watching this, you can see the influence that it had on George Lucas.
I would say also the one that you liked, with the white eyes. She was also kind of scary of a character because, like, when they first introduce those characters, and the halflings are there, she like grabs one of their torches because I think they tell her that the stranger went in the wrong direction, and I guess she knew that he went in the opposite direction. So without saying anything, she's like, "This is what you get for lying." Kind of situation. She just grabs a torch, but takes the flame without burning, and like kind of like the Sonya Blade Kiss of Death. And
but then she burned out the perimeter or something like that with that. Their tents. That's right. And did you notice, or did you think of the Scarlet Witch with her fingers?
Oh, because they were blackened.
They got blackened. Yeah, they got dark when when the spell, I guess, where she's performing a spell.
I don't know
her
if they
finger
were
gun.
always black or they weren't.
I saw it especially when she's turning out the flame.
Yeah.
To disperse, and then whenever she used her magic, that's when I noticed it. She may have had it the whole time. All right, so from what all we said, is it worth the watch to you?
For me, it is. Yes.
I agree with that. I think it's worth the watch. Do you feel it could have been tighter at certain points?
I think because it was slow. I think it could have been cleaned up in some areas. The areas that I would pick personally would have probably been with the captain's son and maybe the son of the I keep forgetting her name.
Okay,
Bronwyn.
So
Like
okay,
those two.
one second. Do you think he's dead?
No,
I don't think he's dead either.
it didn't include it in. But I feel like if he died, that was a waste of storyline. Like you could have just introduced him at the end. You didn't need to do all this other stuff, like having like kind of like vision kind of thing that he had, just for him to die when he did.
Well, the thing is, we see the ceiling collapse,
but we don't
see
die.
the ceiling. Well, that, or we don't see the ceiling collapse on him. So yes, I don't think he is.
And the horse wants
even
to come
though
back.
Even though he was a failure as a Navy personnel, because he was like always in like daydreaming and slipping up and putting others in danger. There were moments where he had some wit with him.
Yeah,
or wits about him.
The way I took it was like, it's not that he was a failure in the sense that like he wasn't good at what he did. Like he was good at what he did, but you could tell like he self-sabotaged himself because he's like, I'm following the path of someone else, and there was a point where all he had to do is tie a knot, and he just let it go, and that was like the final test, and they're like, you failed it, and then this is your fault, and these other two hands are gonna fail with you, which I'm like, I don't get that part. That was like,
well, as a team, yeah, it's a team thing, and I think that was showing him a lesson for him, like your actions affect others.
Makes sense.
So it's not just about you. Just like in the battlefield, when you mess up, it's a potential that others will die, others will suffer. So it's not about you. But I think we're going to see him again.
I think so too. But like I said, if he was just to die, I didn't read the book,
so I have no idea.
If he was just to die, we didn't need all that. Like the father is still around. And that impact could have still been there by him just showing up near the end. He joined, You don't need the full backstory of that if he was just to die. I agree with you. I think he's going to live, and we'll probably see him in season 2. Doing what? I don't know. Lord of the Rings is such a huge lore. I almost give it a pass for being so slow because even though we have a world built, since you're going to prequel, you're still building the world on top of that. And I mean, that's hard. That's hard.
You're right. The thing is also the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, they're slow as well.
They are, yeah.
The Two Towers, that's slow as hell. That's my least favorite of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's with the walking trees and all that stuff. One.
They have strong roots.
Granted, now, I also have the extended versions of the trilogy and the Hobbit, so there's even more material. And those are like 5 hours long each film.
Didn't you do like the full day marathon at the theater? Like, weren't you one of those people that like went in and got the tickets for the all day marathon? But I watched them.
I did it with Kimberly, and Kimberly's like, "What the fuck,
dude? That's like
just like
that was like a 10 and 12 hour day."
Well, she took off from work. I don't think I was working that day, or maybe I wasn't even working. I think I was laid off at that time. It was like. Yeah, because we used to do that. We'll do when a movie comes out and then it's a sequel to other things. So we will sometimes go and catch other films. I used to do that with my other exes too. I mean, it's cheaper to see it at home, but when you're watching it there, the memory is fresh of what you just saw.
Sure.
So you don't have to second guess. Well, we saw the Hobbit trilogy in one shot. To me, the last movie of the trilogy was the worst one.
The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings?
No, The Hobbit, the worst one, was the final.
Okay.
Of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Two Towers, that to me was the worst.
Fair enough.
Of that 3. It was just so slow and it didn't feel like as intense of the first one. Now, granted, we go real back before we're done because we always give our reviews and then we just go on a tangent. But
yeah, we do.
the scene you were talking about with the orcs and Sean Bean's character.
Yeah.
You know, that's the beginning of the second book of the Two Towers, right?
No, I never read the books.
Well, just in case, I know you didn't read the books, but I'm just saying, like, it was talked about that Peter Jackson made that as the ending for the first film, the Fellowship of the Rings.
Makes sense.
Because it holds more weight.
Yeah.
It would not make sense to have him die in the first 5 minutes of the second movie, where you have all that build up, you have the chase, you have them fighting for their lives, and then and so
I mean, he also kept the tradition alive, killing off Sean Bean early on.
I know Game of Thrones here, and I think another film or two that happens to him as well.
It's like a handful of characters that hold like the record most deaths and projects of shows and movies. Sean Bean's up there. Mm-hmm. He's like in the top 5, if not top 10 of performers that if they're in a project, they're probably gonna die. Sean Bean's such a good actor, by the way. I love his
he's good. He has a great charisma about him.
Yeah.
Now, I also had trouble with this, not just because there's so many names, but I'm also watching this, or I was watching this while also watching House of Dragons. So I hope I stuck with my memory correctly on this series or this season, because again, you have all these characters and these names, and they somewhat look similar. Yes, I know there are differences, but when you're watching House of Dragons, and then granted they're on different nights, but there are some times where we couldn't watch it, so we had to watch both on one day.
The similarities are very strong. Let's just put it that
way. Oh, yes.
I will say this. I mean, we both agree as far as Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Although it has a slow build, it's technically worth the watch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I will put on top of that, I liked it because it promoted me to watch the Hobbit series. I may even go back and rewatch Lord of the Rings. So I give it a few extra points, because now I'm like intrigued to rewatch the original materials. And I think you deserve some credit if you promote a project to rewatch like the older stuff. Plus, I never saw a Hobbit, and I was like, I can live without it.
What?
And
how do you mean? How? Huh?
The series. I saw the movie, the animated movie. I just didn't see the 3 movies.
How dare you?
Well, I did now. I watched them now because of the show.
The Hobbit now?
Yeah, I did see it.
Oh, all right. So
because of this series,
that's right. But that's a book. Meaning, it's just one book spread out into 3 movies. Where Lord of the Rings, each movie, The Fellowship, Two Towers, The Return of the King, is 3 separate books.
Well, in fact, I actually learned that just recently that the original Lord of the Rings first volume was supposed to be 1 book, and then they broke it down into 6 different volumes, and then they condensed that back down into 3 movies. It's like a whole different thing.
Okay, so here's a real quick thing also.
We're just dropping nerd cred right
now. Yeah. The third one, did you recognize, is it the third one? But did you recognize one of the actors who made a cameo? He was wearing an eye patch. He was the town spy. Luke Evans is in it, right?
He's the one that shot down the dragon.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's a town spy.
Town spy.
Stephen Colbert.
No.
He wears an eye patch. Yes. He's in it. He makes a cameo because he's such a Tolkien fan. I mean, still to this day, he can tell you everything about it because he grew up reading it like each book like 10 times.
He has he has Sting, the sword Sting.
Right. I mean, even Peter Jackson said he has not met a bigger nerd than Stephen Colbert in the sense of Lord of the Rings.
That's a D&D fan right there too.
Yes, he is. All right. Let's wrap this up. So that is our series review of the first season of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Currently streaming on Amazon Prime. Until next time, will be the next time. I am Angel.
I'm Don.
Love you, bro.
Love you too, bro.